Welcome back to Press Review. Let me start by taking a look at today's front pages in the Middle East. The Jerusalem Post leads reporting that Pope Francis paid tribute to the Jewish religion and state as he wrapped up his brief 3-day visit to the Middle East by placing a note in the Western Wall and laying a wreath on the tomb of the founder of modern Zionism, Theodor Herzl. It also reports that the June 10th presidential election will begin in earnest when 6 candidates will submit the 10 endorsements required to run the Knesset. Speaker Yuli Edelstein ahead of the midnight deadline. From Saudi Arabia, the Arab News reports that a total of 12,500 Saudi students who graduated from American universities this year were honored during a special convocation ceremony organized by the Saudi Cultural Attaché in Washington. The paper also reports that in a bid to boost the tourism industry in the country, the cabinet is aiming to establish 3 non-profit professional associations to develop tourism accommodation facilities and promote tour guides and boost travel and tourism. The UAE's Gulf News reports that Narendra Modi, who led the Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party to a historic victory, was yesterday sworn in as India's Prime Minister, witnessed by an estimated 4,000 people, including Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. The paper also reports that the Philippines has said that 3 Filipinos had been convicted of espionage in Qatar, with one sentenced to death and the others to life in jail. And from the Lebanon, the Daily Star reports that civil servants have returned to the streets as their fight for a wage hike was delivered a fresh blow, with many Christian MPs boycotting parliament over the presidential stalemate. It also reports that the EU has set the next round of talks between 6 powers and Iran on resolving a dispute over Tehran's nuclear program will be held in Vienna from June the 16th to the 20th. The Egypt Independent reports that as polling stations open today on the 2nd day of voting in the presidential election, Tariq Shibal, a member of the Commission Secretariat, said he will enforce sections of presidential election law by fining voters £500 if they fail to cast their ballots. The paper also reports that Cairo airport security chased a Chinese passenger on the runway after the allegedly mentally ill passenger ran onto the runway instead of going to the arrival hall upon exiting the plane. And now let's take a look at the top Middle East news from UK papers. The Guardian leads Middle East news reporting that Tony Blair has said he resents suggestions that he is delaying the publication of the Chilcot inquiry into the handling of the Iraq war, saying it is in his personal interest that the report be published as soon as possible. The paper adds that it has been reported that the delay is due to a dispute over the publication of classified conversations between Blair and George Bush in the run-up to the war, with the Americans opposing the publication of classified presidential material. Also from the UK, the Telegraph leads Middle East news reporting that Syria's foreign ministry has said 11 people, including 6 members of a UN fact-finding mission, have been abducted by armed groups in central Syria. The ministry says the abductions occurred in the countryside around Hama in central Syria as the team tried to visit a town where chlorine gas attacks have recently been reported. The Independent reports that household pets like cats and dogs could be partially to blame for the spread of the mysterious Middle East respiratory syndrome virus. Columbia University's Dr. Thomas Briers has said as scientists around the world struggle to understand more about how the deadly infection, which has killed almost 200 people, is transmitted. And now let's take a look at the top Middle East news in international papers. From Germany, the Deutsche Welle leads its Middle East news reports that polls closed on Monday after a relatively uneventful first day of voting in Egypt's presidential election, in the country's first presidential vote since the ouster of its first democratically elected leader Mohamed Morsi last July. The paper says Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood boycotted Monday's voting, along with the disillusioned revolutionary youth who fear Sisi will become another autocrat in the mold of longtime strongman Hosni Mubarak. China's Global Times reports that the Istanbul 7th Court of Serious Crimes has requested an Interpol red notice for arresting former Israeli Chief of Staff Gabi Ashkenazi as well as Israel's former Naval Forces Commander Eliezer Alfred Marum, former Military Intelligence Chief Amos Yaldinier, and former Air Forces Intelligence Head Avishai Levy for a 2010 raid on a Turkish ship that resulted in the death of 9 Turkish citizens. And finally, the Los Angeles Times reports on Egyptians taking to the polls for a second day of voting in the presidential election. The paper adds that public employees were given the day off to ensure they could vote, traveling back to hometowns if necessary, and polling hours being extended late into the evening. That was it for today. For more updates, please visit Levant.tv. Thanks for watching Press Review, and bye for now.